All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into the world of Sheela Foam Limited.
Yeah, think sleep well mattresses, but
But it goes way beyond mattresses, right?
way beyond,
We're
yeah.
talking Q2, their FY25 financials.
We'll be looking at all sorts of things. Their performance across segments, from furniture cushioning,
Oh, yeah.
comfort foam, even those technical foam
You
products.
might not even realize they make them.
Exactly.
Now we have a ton of stuff to get through today.
We do.
A stack of source material, official financial statements, standalone,
You
consolidated,
got it all?
a presentation for investors, even the auditor's report.
Oh, yeah. Can't forget that.
Yeah. MSKA and Associates, making sure we're on solid ground here.
Got to make sure.
Absolutely.
Think of us as, like financial detectives,
Ooh, I like the
piecing together the story of their recent quarter.
uncovering clues.
Yeah, maybe uncovering some clues about where they're headed next.
All right, so before we get into the numbers, let's set the stage a bit. For anyone who might not be super familiar with Sheela Foam, give us the rundown. What's their footprint? What are their core brands? Where do they operate?
Okay, so Sheela Foam, big player in India,
Huge.
but also internationally.
I was going to say, not just India.
Not just India, no. They've got their Sleepwell brand, household name in India,
Mm-hmm.
but they've got a really strong presence in Australia as well.
Yeah, through their subsidiary Joyce, right?
Choice Pretty, Ltd. Yeah, exactly.
And they're in Spain, too.
Even making inroads in Spain. Yeah, with Interplaspa SL.
So clearly they're ambitious.
They are, and remember, it's not just mattresses. Furniture cushioning, all sorts of comfort foam, and even those technical foams used in tons of industries.
Okay, so they're diversified.
Very much so.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about those numbers. Revenue growth, pretty impressive, wouldn't you say?
Very impressive. 42% year-on-year jump
Yeah.
for their standalone business in Q2, and that's
Standalone.
33% growth on a consolidated basis.
Still impressive.
It really is. It is serious momentum.
Yeah. Now, when you look at the segment performance details, the investor presentation breaks this down.
Right.
It seems like mattresses are still their bread and butter.
Yeah. I mean, it's clear that mattresses are still the core of their business.
It makes sense.
But what I find particularly interesting is the performance of their international operations,
Oh, okay.
especially considering their growth strategy.
You're talking about Australia and Spain.
Exactly, yeah.
The investor presentation, I thought, had some really intriguing stuff there.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in there.
So break it down for us. What's going on with those international operations?
Okay, well, Joyce Petty, Ltd., down in Australia, they're delivering some really strong EBITDA margins.
Now, I'm sure some folks listening are saying, wait, what is EBITDA and why should I care?
Good point. EBITDA stands for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization.
Right.
It's basically a way to gauge a company's core operating profitability.
So before you factor in all the...
Yeah, before you factor in all the financial stuff, this is how efficiently they're turning sales into cash.
Okay, got it. So in Sheela Foam's case, their standalone EBITDA margin hit 11.7% in Q2, which is...
A significant jump year on year.
Yeah, that's pretty significant. So good sign.
It is a good sign.
Okay.
It suggests that they're becoming more efficient at turning those sales into profit. But
There's always a but.
there is always a but. It's worth noting that this jump in profitability happened against the backdrop of fluctuating raw material prices.
Yeah, we're talking TDI, polyol.
Exactly, and they have seen some volatility lately.
They have.
So the investor presentation even mentions a sustainable EBITDA adjustment,
Oh, okay.
which tells me they're trying to account for those swings, give a more realistic picture of their long-term profitability.
Makes sense, all right. Now, let's not forget about that Curlon acquisition.
Right.
It's starting to show up in those consolidated financials, which honestly,
It complicates things.
it makes things a little more complex.
It does.
So how do we unpack this? What do we need to know?
Well, we need to be careful
Yeah.
untangling these numbers. The auditor's report actually helps us.
Does it really?
It does, yeah. It helps us understand which subsidiaries are included
Okay.
in that consolidation after the acquisition.
Makes sense.
But there are also one-time adjustments
Oh, of course.
related to that integration process that we need to consider.
It's like we're looking at a puzzle
Yeah,
where some of the pieces are still being put together.
exactly. A perfect analogy.
All right, so before we get into all those puzzle pieces,
Right.
let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll delve deeper into those one-time adjustments, the Curlon integration, and a lot more. So stay with us.
All right. So we're back and ready to really get into the weeds with these Sheela Foam financials. Before the break, we were talking about those one-time adjustments related to the Curlon acquisition. And, I think for a lot of folks, these can be kind of tricky.
Yeah, definitely. They can be confusing. Yeah. What should our listeners be looking out for here?
So basically, they're accounting entries, right?
Hmm.
And they reflect the unusual costs, maybe gains that kind of pop up during something like an acquisition.
Okay, so these are things that aren't necessarily going to happen all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
They're important to look at, but they don't necessarily um, reflect the ongoing profitability
Right. Because they're one.
of the combined businesses. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's sort of like when, you go a little crazy with your holiday spending,
Mm.
you've got to kind of separate those one-time splurges from your regular monthly budget.
That's a great analogy.
Right, to get a true sense of your finances.
I like it.
Okay, so in this case, what are some of the adjustments that Sheila Foam is making?
So some of these adjustments relate to like revaluing the inventory
Okay,
they acquired from Curlon, right?
makes sense.
Maybe writing off some of Curlon's assets that might
Mm.
not be as valuable
Okay.
as initially thought. Even things like legal fees, consulting fees.
Right, the costs of doing business.
Exactly. The costs of making that deal happen.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm trying to understand, how do I account for these adjustments when I look at the financials?
Yeah.
What's the best way to sort of see through all the noise?
Well, this is where I think it really helps to kind of think critically,
Right.
look beyond just the top line numbers,
Right. Look for the story.
understand the underlying story. Yeah.
Hmm.
And in this case, it's really helpful, I think, to look at that sustainable EBITDA.
Oh, yeah. They talk about that in their investor presentation.
Exactly. They highlight it in the presentation. And that adjusted metric really strips away those one-time items and gives us a better picture
Okay.
of the core profitability.
So it's kind of like if you're using a recipe,
Right.
but you have a different oven,
Right.
you got to tweak it a little bit,
Exactly.
adjust for the temperature to get the desired outcome.
Yeah, you're aiming for the same delicious outcome, but you might need to tweak things a bit
I like it.
along the way.
Yeah. Okay, so we're talking about things that give us the full picture.
Right.
I can't help but think about the auditor's report.
Yes.
It's
It's a good one.
it might not be the sexiest thing to read,
Not the most thrilling.
but it does offer some valuable insights, wouldn't you say?
Definitely does.
So for our listeners who are, really trying to understand this, what should they be focusing on when they look at that report?
Well, remember, that auditor's report is an independent assessment
Oh, that's right.
of how reliable all these financial statements are, right?
Yeah.
So they're really looking for any red flags.
They're looking for trouble.
They are. They're looking for any errors and, worst case scenario, any fraud.
So they're like the financial watchdogs.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay.
Making sure everything is legit.
So are they barking in this case, or?
No, not barking. So they've issued what we call an unqualified opinion.
Okay.
It's basically the best possible outcome.
So it's a clean bill of health.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's good to know. Gives us a little more
A
confidence
little more confidence, yeah,
that these numbers are accurate.
definitely.
Okay, now let's zoom out a little bit and talk about, the industry in general.
Okay, yeah.
What trends are you seeing that are shaping the future of foam manufacturing?
Oh, that's a good question. One thing that really stands out to me, and it's clear from their presentation, is this growing demand for specialized foam
Okay.
products.
Not just your average mattress foam, I guess?
No, we're not just talking mattresses anymore. There's a ton of demand in industries like automotive, even healthcare,
Wow.
even packaging.
So foam is everywhere.
Foam is quietly taking over the world.
It really is.
And that's where Sheela Foam's diversification strategy, I think, is really smart.
Right.
They're not just relying on mattresses, right? They're developing new formulations, new markets, and they're even exploring different applications for their existing products.
So they're trying to stay ahead of the curve,
They are. They're playing the long game,
which is good.
which is a really good sign
Yeah.
for their long-term sustainability.
Yeah.
And speaking of sustainability,
Oh, yeah.
it's clear that they're committed to environmental and social responsibility as well. They're investing in renewable energy, reducing waste, supporting local communities.
And that's good, not just from a, doing good perspective,
Right.
but that's also something that investors look at these days.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not just about profits anymore. It's about making a positive impact.
Yeah, people want to put their money behind companies that align with their values.
They do, especially, younger generations of investors.
Absolutely. Okay, let's go back to international operations,
Okay.
specifically Australia and Spain. We talked about Australia's strong performance. We talked about Spain's potential.
Right.
But let's dive a little deeper into that. What's really driving those
Okay,
dynamics?
well, in Australia, we see a mature market,
Right.
and Sheela Foam's already got a great brand presence.
Okay.
They've built a solid track record. They benefit from economies of scale, really efficient operations.
That's good.
And that's really reflected in those healthy EBITDA margins.
Okay, so they've got a good foundation there.
Yeah, strong foundation.
Okay, what about Spain? What's making that market so, enticing, yet also a little bit challenging?
So Spain offers a potentially lucrative market.
Right.
There's a lot of room for growth,
Right. Right.
but it's a totally different game
Okay.
compared to Australia.
Right. Right.
They're still building that brand awareness there.
Gotcha.
They're navigating a really, um, you know, complex,
A lot of red tape.
a lot of red tape. Yeah, regulatory environment.
Okay.
They're also facing some stiff competition from established players in Europe.
Okay.
So it's higher risk, but there's a lot of potential reward.
Okay, so higher risk, higher reward.
Yeah,
So we'll see if that pays off.
definitely. Cracking that Spanish market, I mean, that could be a game changer for them.
Huge.
It could be huge.
Okay. All right. Well, we've been dancing around it a little bit,
We have.
but let's just get right to it. The Curlon acquisition.
Big one.
This was a big move, clearly reshaping the future of Sheela foam.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on this play?
So no doubt it was a significant move.
Yeah.
This acquisition, it wasn't just about adding another brand, right?
Right.
This was about consolidating their market share,
Right.
getting into new product categories, and really taking advantage of Curlon's, distribution network.
So it's a power play.
Yeah, definitely.
But, with great power comes great responsibility, and I'm sure some big challenges.
Oh, absolutely. And we're already seeing some of those reflected in the financial statement.
Yeah, those adjustments.
Yeah, with those one-time adjustments we talked about,
Right.
and integration costs, potentially redundancies,
Yeah.
and you even run the risk of, cultural clashes between the two companies.
Yeah. It's like merging two families.
That's a good way to put it.
Takes time for everyone to adjust.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Doesn't always go smoothly.
Right. And then, of course, you've got the competitive landscape as well.
Exactly.
How does this shake things up, and how are their competitors going to respond?
That's the big question.
So many things to think about.
A lot of moving parts.
It really is. It's a reminder that even with a really strategic acquisition, there's always a little bit of uncertainty.
There always is.
So let's bring it back to our listeners here. We've covered a lot of ground:
We have
revenue growth, international expansion,
the Curlon acquisition.
sustainability.
Hmm.
What are some key takeaways here? Okay, so we've covered a ton. Revenue growth, international stuff, the Curlon acquisition, even sustainability. What does it all mean for investors? Is this company one to watch?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? We've gone
Okay.
through the numbers,
Yeah.
analyzed those ratios,
Peeked behind the curtain even.
even peeked behind the curtain with that auditor's
Yeah.
report. So now we got to ask ourselves, is this a stock you'd want in your portfolio?
Yeah, and obviously, we can't give specific investment advice.
Of course not.
You got to talk to your financial advisor for that, always.
Definitely.
But we can give some things to think about.
We can give some food for thought.
Exactly. So what are some of those factors, maybe some questions our listeners should be asking themselves?
Well, first of all, let's start with the positives. Sheela Foam, they are undeniably the leader in the Indian mattress market.
Or,
They've got that brand recognition, the distribution network, and a good track record of profitability.
and they're not just resting on their laurels either.
No, not at all. They're expanding internationally, right?
Yeah.
They're diversifying the products they offer and investing in new technologies.
Trying to stay ahead of the game.
Yeah, all really positive signs for future growth. But there's
Yeah.
always a but.
There's always a but in investing.
Always.
Hmm.
There are some risks to consider, of course.
Of course.
Raw material prices are still unpredictable,
Right.
and competition's heating up, both in India and abroad.
It's getting tougher.
It is
And that Curlon integration, it's promising,
very promising.
but it's still a work in progress.
It is, yeah. So it's that classic balancing act, right?
Right.
Weighing those potential rewards against the risks.
Right. So what questions should investors be asking themselves?
Okay, well, I think it comes down to a few things. First, do you believe in the foam industry's long-term potential?
Is this a sector that's going to keep growing?
Right, exactly.
And then the second thing,
The second thing is, do you trust the management team
to execute this
to
strategy.
execute their strategy? Yeah.
Can they handle the ups and downs of raw material prices? Can they integrate Curlon smoothly? Can they capitalize on that international growth potential?
That's a lot on their plate.
It is. And then I guess the final question is, how does all of this fit into your personal investment strategy?
Right.
Right. Are you a long-term investor? You okay with a little bit of volatility? Or are you looking for something more stable?
Yeah, it's all about finding those companies that really align with your own goals, your own risk tolerance.
Absolutely. One thing that really stood out to me going through their materials was their focus on sustainability. It
Yes.
seems like they're really trying to do things the right way, not just from a financial standpoint,
They are, yeah.
but environmentally and socially as well.
That's right. More and more investors, they want to see that.
Yeah, they do.
They want to invest in companies that are making a positive impact on the world.
Absolutely. So it sounds like Sheila Foam's trying to do both,
They are, yeah.
make money and make a difference.
They're putting their money where their mouth is, right? Investing in renewable energy, reducing their footprint, supporting those local communities.
It's a good look.
Yeah, taking that holistic approach.
Yeah, yeah. Good for everyone involved. All right. So before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought. We've been talking numbers, ratios, metrics,
Lots of numbers.
all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, investing is also about stories.
It's true. Numbers tell us what happened, but stories help us understand why.
Exactly. And Sheila Foam has a pretty compelling story.
A really compelling story.
Yeah.
It's about innovation, resilience, and growth.
They started small, but they had big dreams, always evolving, adapting to that changing global landscape.
And that story's still being written, which is exciting.
It is. So as you think about where to invest, ask yourself, do you believe in their story?
That's a great question.
Do you see their vision for the future? Because ultimately, that's what's going to drive their success.
I agree.
And that's what's going to determine whether or not this deep dive was worth your time.
Well said.
So thanks for joining us on this exploration of Sheila Foam.
It's been fun.
We hope you learned something
We hope so.
to help you with your own investing journey.
Until next time.
Happy investing, everybody!